Wonderful. Thank you so much, Philip and Patricia, for your reflections on the opening of the Stockholm Plus 50 conference. I personally look forward to following the conference for the rest of today and tomorrow and seeing what outcomes it generates. I think we heard some very interesting perspectives on the triple planetary crisis and the role of the private sector, and really appreciated that strong call to action from Patricia, talking also about how the business case for sustainability has never been stronger, something I very much agree with. So this was a perfect introduction into the panel discussion that we're going to have now on accelerating climate action. And we're going to focus on climate transition plans of businesses across Europe. And we have really a wonderful panel of business leaders from different industries and from different parts of Europe. All of these leaders taking climate action to the next level in their organizations. So we have Ms. Päivi Koivisto, who is the Vice President of Sustainability at Cargotec in Finland. Our second panelist is Dr. Ronald Sellinger, who is the CEO of Hemofarm, part of the Stara Group in Serbia. Then we have Mr. Ibrahim Özgur Yildirim, the CEO of Kordsa in Turkey. And here I'm trying to say what we used to say Turkey in the new way since yesterday, new formal name in English for Turkey. So please, Ibrahim, correct me if I didn't get it entirely right. And then finally, last but definitely not least, we have Miss Christina Friborg, who is the Executive Vice President and Head of Sustainability, Ethics and Compliance and Health and Safety at SSAB in Sweden. So warm welcome to all four of you. We're going today to be talking, hearing from these corporate leaders insights about how they are taking climate actions, some of the lessons learned, some of the challenges that they still face, and how they're working through them. While the panel is talking, we'll be posting in the chat a poll for everyone in the audience to respond to. It's a question coming up. What do you think poses the greatest risk to your business or industry due to climate change? So appreciate responses from everyone in the audience while we continue and while we run this panel discussion. So I'm pleased now to turn to the panelists, and I'd like to first hear briefly from each of you just about the challenges that companies in Europe face when taking climate action, when contributing to mitigating the risk of climate change. So first, turning to Päivi from Cargotec, what would you say is the one biggest barrier or challenge to reducing greenhouse gas emissions and fighting climate change in your industry?
Thank you, Ole, and great to be here. Yes, for us at Cargotec, we produce equipment for cargo and load handling, which traditionally has been running on diesel, so having combustion engines like any other vehicles. And that we tackle, or the biggest action we can take to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions is through electrifying our portfolio. And we at Cargotec actually today already have an electric version of every product available. But of course, with electric products, you need to charge them. And the charging infrastructure is not yet fully supporting the transition to, if you like, a zero diesel. So this is one obstacle we need to overcome, even region by region or location by location in Europe. But having said that, in Europe, which is a good thing, regulation and the overall sentiment supports towards electrification. So the challenge is actually even bigger outside of Europe if you look at this globally.
Great. Challenge, but still some progress made, at least in Europe, right?
Indeed.
So turning now to you, Ronald Sellinger from Hemofarm, and I guess in the pharmaceutical industry, what do you see as the one of the biggest challenges to climate action?
I think first of all, also thanks from my side that you include us in this. The Balkans and Europe are probably not always considered to be on the forefront of sustainability, but if you look in detail, you might find it differently. We have plenty of companies who are following us on this, and for us here in the pharmaceutical industry, we are a white collar industry, so we are not that much polluting, but energy is certainly one of our biggest thing. So we are trying to optimize the production in all means to save on energy. We are also going on electric vehicles, trying to recycle as much as possible. There are many-fold, actually. It's not one big thing. It is many things which are contributing on this end.
Great. Thank you. Ibrahim Özgur Yildirim from Quartza. So in your industry, briefly, what do you think, or what do you see as the biggest challenge?
The biggest challenge in our industry, by the way, is mobility industry. I can say we are producing the skeleton of the tire cord fabric, and also some composite materials for aerospace and cars. So the main problem is, again, emissions. And in order to reduce emissions, you need performance. On the other hand, you need long-term sustainability goals. So producing performance materials with low emissions is the challenge for me. When you look at this, this is not a new thing. Since the beginning of the industry, it's always efficiency problem versus long-term goals.
Okay. Great, very interesting. And turning now to you, Christina Friborg. I think we heard in the opening of Stockholm Plus 50 this morning a reference to the first fossil fuel-free car, or I'm sure that's something you know a lot about, but turning to you also in steel production, what is really the biggest challenge in terms of climate action?
Thank you. I think it was a construction machine, but I'll come back to that later in our panel discussion. Thank you for inviting us, and thank you so much for letting us speak a little bit about the fossil emission-free steel that we want to produce in the future. SSAB is a steel producer. We produce steel from both iron ore and scrap. And as some of you may know, there is not enough scrap in the world to supply the demand for the steel the global demand for steel that we have, which means that we need to find new ways of producing steel from iron ore. This is why we created the partnership with our iron ore supplier LKAB and our electricity supplier Vattenfall to create this fossil emission-free value chain. When we do so, we want to, as SSAB, we account for about 10% of Sweden's CO2 emissions and 7% of Finland's. So it is really important for us to do this transformation of the company. But doing so, we do go for electrification, similar to what Ronald and Päivi has already said. So for us also, the challenge is to get the fossil-free electricity in the right amounts, in the right places. And our electricity demand or need is actually very, very big. So this is the biggest challenge for us right now. But we keep our hopes up, and we are quite confident that the situation will be good eventually.
Great. Thank you so much, Christina, and thanks to all of you. So now we look forward to hearing a little bit more about how you're working through those challenges and what you've done in your respective companies to really advance climate action in a very ambitious way. So I'll turn back to you, Päivi. I understand that Cargotec has set targets with the Science Based Targets Initiative to reduce 50% of Scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions from a 2019 base year, and you'll make those reductions by 2030. Could you tell us maybe a little bit more about what you're doing to achieve these targets? And I think for the audience also to learn from how you're working through some of the major obstacles you've been facing or are still facing to really reach that target?
Yes, thank you. Happy to. So yes, we've really set an ambitious target, so to reduce the emissions by at least 50% across the whole value chain by 2030. And to understand the actions, I a bit elaborate on how a carbon footprint actually looks like. So 98% of the carbon footprint comes from scope 3. So the biggest shares from the use of our products, so the scope 3 downstream emissions. And then the second biggest part from scope 3 upstream, i.e. the purchased goods and services, which means that our own operations account only for about 1% of the total footprint. And this then clearly tells that we can't achieve the target alone. So we need to collaborate throughout the value chain, both with our customers and our suppliers. This is both a challenge, but also a great opportunity for partnershiping. Now, one obstacle with this value chain approach and need to cooperate is around data. So we would need much more accurate data in order to make fact-based decisions. And the lack of data is especially big in the supply chain. And how we've started to tackle this challenge is through engagement. So we engage with our suppliers, want to understand what are their targets, what are their actions, maybe what are their challenges, and educate them on the other hand on our targets and what we want to achieve. And then if everything runs out perfect, we find a partnership and together collaborate to reduce the emissions from the supplier and our end. So that's one thing we're doing. Then concretely, what we're also doing in order to reduce the emissions is through electrification, as I already mentioned, so electrifying our offering, looking at digitalization, automation, and robotics to eliminate inefficiencies throughout the value chain. We're looking for circular solutions, so recycling, for instance, steel is one good tool. Looking for lighter products, so R&D and lighter products, which would then consume less energy when they're used, but also would need less raw materials when produced. Or even then looking at alternative low carbon footprint materials to replace some with higher footprint. And one concrete great example is actually with SSAB, since we are very dependent on steel and are very much looking forward for the great development in the steel industry, and happy to hear more from Christina on the development on the fossil-free steel later today.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for sharing that. I think in particular, the great ambitions you have in scope 3, that's something that a lot of companies are struggling to set that level of ambition and follow through on that with their whole value chain. So yeah, wonderful that you've been able to do that and that you're working through that in partnership with SSAB and others. Great. Ronald, turning to you, I understand from your sustainability report that Hemofarm has continued to break your production records. Could you talk a little bit about how you've been, how your company has sustainably managed resources, manufacturing, and waste during this time of growth?
Thanks for the question, Ole. I mean, we started sometimes in 2012 to embark on the sustainable development journey. And frankly, it was a journey of little steps, which turned out to be big steps. We worked on so many things. We worked on optimizing our production to not increase energy resource like water also needed for the production, by basically fixing all the small issues which in production there is. We have big plants, and certainly by isolating valves, by isolating things, by exchanging components, by getting new LEDs in which are more energy efficient. This was one of the streams which we embarked upon quite early. What we did also, we really went into the product itself. Pharmaceutical boxes, there outside there is a cardboard package, and we in Hemofarm and we are delivering for the whole Stada group. We have 80% of all cardboard boxes being produced out of recycled paper. We try to shorten the supply chain We have really worked on so many issues. We underwent a lot of external audits, like with the IFC, where we've been basically guided and have now documented that we are one of the 20 most efficient, energy efficient plants in the world in our sector. These are all little steps which, as said, made the big step. And somehow, if you do this for a long, long time, the whole organization embarks upon. And the organization in our area is actually deeply embedded also in the communities. Thus, the collaboration with municipalities, with other suppliers of ours, made them also embark on this, made them also take action on this, and all together, this is really something where we are taking big pride in. Now, also from the whole group level, we have set clear goals. We have now more than 15% of renewable energy for the whole Strada group. We are looking into using renewable energy like solar panels in places where it really makes a change. We have a big plant in Vietnam, which is very much relying upon this. So many, many little steps, which in the end makes it work.
Well, thank you so much, Ronald, for highlighting, exactly how it's an organization-wide effort. Climate action is really something that needs to touch on everyone in the organization. And I think I like your point about all the small steps that adds up to something bigger, but also really how businesses can play a role beyond their own company and their own operations and be a positive influence on climate action in the wider society. Thank you so much. So, Christina, waiting in excitement to hear a bit more about how you in SSAB produced the first fossil-free steel, I think last year, and how you plan to bring this to market in the coming years. Can you talk a little bit about this and also how you see this innovation positively influencing the broader industries and maybe also partnerships?
Sure. Thank you so much. As Päivi already mentioned, we are proud partners with each other. Cargotec is one of our favorite customers right now. We're partnering up with for the fossil-free steel. Yesterday, we did indeed announce that another customer of ours has been able to deliver a first construction machine made out of our fossil-free steel to their customers. So we're really working on this value chain perspective from the mine to the customer's customer. Very inspiring indeed. We did deliver the first batch. It's been a very, very quick development. We did deliver the first batch of fossil-free steel to the customer less than a year ago. It was just after the summer in last year. And this year, we have now been able to see our customer deliver to their customers. So we've really proved that not only does the technique work, that there is a good demand for the fossil-free steel in the market. Just some days ago, we were also able to announce that Volvo Trucks will be on a small scale be able to use our fossil-free steel in their electric vehicles. So I think hopefully this is inspiring for not only the industry but also other peers in seeing that if such a heavy industrial company like SSAB producing steel can make a sustainable material for our customers, other companies have in the heavy industry or other industries can do it as well with the right parameters, of course.
Great. Yes, indeed. Very, very inspiring, and look forward to following that going to market and hopefully, influencing the opportunities across so many other industries.
Yeah. Well, we do hope that we will have this fossil-free steel in industrial production in 2026. So there's still a few years ahead, but we're still taking each year small steps or even larger steps towards the industrial commercialization of the fossil-free steel. It's really super interesting, and we're so happy to see the large amount of interest from our customers and their customers also. So we can really, for us, it's really important to see this the fossil emission-free value chain that I've mentioned a few times now, because that's the only way to do it. We cannot do it ourselves. We need to do it together.
Exactly. Great. So, Ibrahim, turning now to you, I understand that Quartza, your company, joined the Global Compact's Climate Ambition Accelerator through the network in Turkey. Yes, last year was it? Could you tell us a little bit about that experience and what actions this has led to in your company to really ramp up climate and sustainability efforts?
Thanks, Ole. Actually, I like the word accelerate. So when I was a student in university 25 years ago, I heard the sustainability word and it was really abstract word. Nobody knows what is it really. At the end of the day, it's nice to see now everybody's talking about it. And still it is not enough. But this kind of programs is making a complex issue a simpler issue so that everybody can understand. So I think it's very beneficial. And also we have learned a lot about the right steps, how to move on further in our sustainability journey. So in 2014, we signed the Global Compact, and then we move on making plans for the emission reduction, water management. This kind of thing started 10 years ago maximum. But now we are in a very good situation using these efforts and also having a better governance of sustainability issues in the whole organization because it's effective. We are having 5,000 employees in Corsa and 60,000 employees in Sabancı Group, which is our mother company. So when you look, many people are affected from what we are doing, and being a role model in such a effort is important, especially in developing countries like Turkey. When I say this, I can say that we have a lot of continuous improvement efforts, but we get very good scores from CDP, climate change and water programs like A- and A. And during this time, we have 2 gold medals from EcoVadis, and we have all the science-based targets initiatives since 2021. We already signed and committed. So we are trying to make the measurements for scope 3 emissions, trying to also affect our suppliers, all the supply chain, all the value chain since 2020. So I see this is a total effort. It's not one-time thing. So we need to continuously move on. So I believe this kind of programs are making a unique advantage that everybody is talking about the same thing. Especially the science-based targeting is very critical, I think, because nobody knows how to target. Really, there is a problem about this one. Everybody is mentioning about 0 in 2050. Okay, but what in next year? So this kind of approach is very, very valuable, I think, and we are using this heavily. I can say on top of this, what we have achieved is low carbon transition planning is there. So we are using more renewable energy. Approximately 12-15% of our energy is from the renewable energy certificates. And we are also making investment for the solar panels for renewable energy production in our production companies. So it's never ending. But the best part is, on top of this, everybody mentioned about electrification and lightweighting in the mobility industry, which we are in. The best thing that we have done in last 6 years is we entered to the area of the composites. And this is very critical for the future of the mobility. It's very heavily used in aerospace, but in the automotive, whenever it is begin used, most probably this will be helping the emission reduction a lot. And this is the future of the mobility, I think. And we are now making investment in this area. This is the best thing that we have done.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ibrahim. I mean, great to hear that the program was practical and helpful in accelerating your approach to climate action and sustainability. I agree. Acceleration is a good term here because so many companies are really doing great things, but currently, when we add it all up, it's not sufficient. So, and it's not sufficiently fast, right? So we need to really accelerate. But looking at the upside, right? When we look at science-based targets, now we have companies from covering 1/3 of the global economy, either having set science-based targets or at least having committed to it already. So there's a lot of progress to build on and to accelerate based on. So thank you so much for sharing that. Time is running fast here. I was wondering, Ivy, we heard Christina talk a bit about their industry and how if that industry can change, that provides some hope for other heavy emitting industries as well. Just wanted to follow up with you, because the cargo and logistics industries are obviously also a significant share of global emissions. To what extent did that play a role, your industry's role, or the impact of your industry? To what extent did that play a role when you started setting targets and designed your trajectory in Cargotec?
Yes, it has a huge impact, and I'm building on what Christina said on the partnershipping. So again, we can't do it alone, and indeed the cargo and logistics industry is a big polluter, and we need to transform the whole industry into a low carbon industry, and that can only happen if the whole value chain cooperates together. If we now look at our own role and plan, so a lot of our equipment is actually dependent on the energy used by the ships or trucks our equipment is on. So we need to understand our customers' transition plans and build ours then based on that, and again discuss to suppliers and together find ways how to reduce it over the value chain. And here I already mentioned the challenge with data, but it's true for the whole industry. So we would much better need to understand how actually carbon dioxide, if you like, flows throughout the value chain in order to understand that when we make a decision in one part that where it decreases emissions, that we are sure that it doesn't actually increase the emissions in another part. And there I think we still have lots to do in the transparency to get the data right. But all of this is improving since, as you just said, many companies have set their science-based targets and most can't solve the challenge. If not any company, I don't think at least many can solve the challenge alone. So this requires partnershiping also in the logistics industry.
Great, thanks so much. We've heard from all of you and how you're leading action in your companies and industries. I'd love here in conclusion to try and get a little bit more from you, some final advice for some of the other businesses in the audience who may not have come quite as far in creating ambitious climate transition plans for their companies. So maybe, Ronald, if I could start with you this time. You've shared great work that you're doing in Hemofarm, but what would be your advice for those other companies in the audience?
First of all, yes, you start with little things, as I said. You go everywhere and just look for the biggest deficiencies which you have and try to fix them and then lift your company up bit by bit. You work with your people, actually. And we, as many other companies, obviously have values upon which we are living and dealing with things on a day-to-day basis. What we did actually is we linked those values to the sustainability goals of the UN, thus having basically made our sustainable development an intrinsic motivation on the go for everyone. And this then also in terms of crisis, when we had, for instance, the COVID times, it was a no-brainer. We first took care about our people, pushed everyone out who didn't need to be in the production just to keep it going, because for us the biggest thing was to serve our communities, our markets with the medicine, keep supplying, and this was one of our biggest, let's say, objective, which once again, having all little steps in production, in logistics, in sales, in governmental relations being linked to the sustainable development is then just creating it much more better, and the advancement in all this. So start small and you see you will end big, and then start tying everything together to make it a daily routine without even thinking about sustainability, because it's a normal thing.
Thank you so much, Ronald. Ibrahim, same question to you. What's your most important piece of advice for a company starting their journeys?
The important thing here is never give up. So the thing that we are fighting for during sustainability effort is our world, so our kids' future. So we should be always continuously improve and make it a better initiative. So we should take the accountability and responsibility and develop better systems to measure what we are doing while we are making some other thing. So everybody should be aware first, and it should not be 46% of the European companies in the initiative. It should be 100%. So everybody should be more aware. But what can we do is, in our part, what can we do? We can produce continuously the sustainable products in a sustainable production environment to protect the environment through our innovation and efficiency, but not forgetting the real target to have a sustainable world together.
Thank you, Ibrahim. Christina, piece of advice for you, maybe thinking in particular about other companies in high emitting sectors where it seems really daunting and difficult and expensive to decarbonize. How do you get started there?
Well, let's first all conclude that it is really vital that we accelerate the transformation of not only the hard to abate sectors, but all of us, if we are to reach the Paris Agreement. So we are in a hurry. This is one of the reasons that we have decided to go largely fossil free at 2030 instead of 2045, in addition to the customer demand. I think you should not be so afraid. There are a number of different innovations that can be used. If you look at your largest impact, go for the largest impact, and be innovative, partner up with whomever you can partner up, because, as I said before, but also as Päivi said, we cannot do this by ourselves. We need to partner up in order for all the different steps to come together. I normally say that it's like being, taking the train. You can choose whether you want to go first class, second class, third class, or fourth class, and whatever you do, just get sure to get a ticket and don't stay on the quay, because the train's leaving and you really want to be on board that train if you want to survive long term.
Great, thank you. So, Päivi, you get the final word here on this panel. Love to hear one piece of advice from you to other companies, maybe also companies thinking about companies who haven't yet committed to science-based targets or set their own ambitious targets yet. How do you think they best learn from
Yes,
yourself?
if I have to pick one, so my kind of piece advice would be that get it into the core strategy of the company. So climate has to be there. Do not develop sustainability strategies, but have a sustainable strategy for the company. I think that's the key to success and getting the right commitment from the top management as well. And I'm really happy and proud to say that at Cargotec we have two strategic breakthrough objectives, one on profitable growth and the other one on climate. And if and when we want to achieve both, that means that we actually start decoupling economic growth from emissions, which which I guess globally we would need to do. So we need to find solutions how to grow in a green and low carbon way. It's not an easy thing, but I think once you have it in the strategy, then the whole organization gets, if you like, the mandate to work on this challenge, and it gets also the right attention it deserves and needs to have, and they're also kind of speeding it up with the actions.
Great. Thank you so much. I think that's all we have time for in this panel. But I thought it was really interesting, and I hope the audience felt the same, learning from your leadership, your experiences, but also, thank you for sharing some of the challenges that you're still working through, because that's really also how we learn from each other where it gets really difficult. You made my life easy here in you summarizing really many of the key points. The train has left the station. We need to accelerate. I'm so pleased how you've all also talked about the role that ambitious targets play, how we need innovation and partnerships, and how this needs to be really an organizational wide effort. So hopefully we've all learned a lot. I've learned a lot. I thank you so much for also your encouragement and inspiration to other participants in the events today. So with this, I am closing this panel. Thought it was really great. We heard from the Stockholm Plus 50 conference first, and then transitioned into hearing some real leaders, some practical examples from companies. So big thanks to our panelists, and now look forward to the next two panels here from Europe, and then really to the rest of the Leaders Summit. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.